Okay, so our first speaker tonight. Oops. Dr. Michelle Bean is co-owner of Optimal Health and Fitness, a holistic health center that integrates acupuncture, chiropractic, nutritional ketosis, fitness, and other modalities. She also co-leads an outdoor fitness boot camp, has a black belt in mixed martial arts, and loves to educate individuals on many aspects of health. Tonight, she'll be talking to us about endocannabinoids and their receptors that are found throughout the entire body, in the brain, organs, connective tissues, glands, and immune cells, where they regulate a constant homeostasis. So please welcome Michelle Bean.
And we're on. Wow, this is incredible. I love to see everyone out here today. It's really interesting that on the timing, everyone's like, this is great timing. This is really good timing, to be up here speaking about cannabis. And today's 4/19, but tomorrow's 4/20. Does anyone catch that? So if only it was a day later. I'm from Santa Cruz. I live in Santa Cruz right now, and it's practically a national holiday in Santa Cruz every year. So, yes. So, just so I know who I'm talking to, I'm just going to ask a couple questions. And first of all, everyone's familiar with the term cannabis? Is everyone familiar with the term cannabis? Most people. Okay. And when I talk about, and I'm going to go through all of this terminology, and I'm going to go through it slow. And cannabidiol. So this has been a huge interest of mine for maybe about. I'm a newbie, so I'm going to say about 4 years, maybe 5 years. And when I grew up, marijuana was the term that I used, and marijuana was illegal for me, and it was the evil thing to do, like say no to drugs. And I've grown up with that understanding. I'm only a little grown up, actually. But up until this time, I've grown up with this understanding that, the pot is bad and marijuana is bad, and it's never been something that's been in my consciousness. So about 4 years ago, I'm a chiropractor, and about 4 years ago, my mom went into surgery for her back. Actually, back up 20 years ago, she went in for a back surgery, and it was failed. It was a failed back surgery. So she spent about 17, 18 years of the rest of that part in misery and pain. And back, 20 years ago, when they did surgery, they would take a piece of the bone from the hip, they would scrape that bone, and then they would put it as part of the fusion. They'd use it. So for 15 years, my mom's been suffering, not so much even from the back pain, the original source, but from where they took the bone. But that being said, she's been on this constant, ongoing, she went down the funnel, right? In the traditional American model of treating chronic pain. So, and it got so bad, and I believe it's because of that fusion that the rest of her spine just continued to deteriorate. So, 4 years ago, she was going in for a full spinal surgery, and they wouldn't even touch her spine because her neck was so bad. So she first had to go in and get her neck fused, and they fused her from about C3 to C7, so pretty much her entire neck is fused. And then a year later, they fused the rest of her spine. So she has 2 freely movable joints in her spine right now. And being a chiropractor and really understanding the nervous system and the correlation between movement and spinal movement and gravity and how our brain processes information and life, really, this was detrimental to me. But even more than that, when, just right before the surgery, the neurosurgeon takes us into the office and says, you know what, we have a really big concern here. And that's that your mom is on pretty much every medication that she can be taking right now to try and control her pain, but none of that worked, right? So she was maxed out on medication. And the neurosurgeon told us our biggest fear is that when we take her off of the anesthesia, that we're not going to be able to control her pain. And that fear became a reality. So she went through the surgery and came out of came out of surgery and spent about 3 days in ICU. And typically the people who go in for this type of surgery will spend at least 24 hours in ICU. And the main purpose of that was to control her pain. So she was in really, really constant high amount of pain for a good 2.5 days, till it finally came down to a level that they could control. And then of course they took her and put her on the main floor, and 3 or 4 days goes by and she starts moving bowels, and she can get out of bed, and so they send her home. And they call that a successful surgery, right? So in the back of my mind, I keep hearing this term, medical marijuana, right? Medical marijuana. And I keep pushing away because I'm like, no, that's, those are drugs. We can't, I'm not gonna give my mom drugs. And it just got louder and louder and louder for me until finally one day I started, and I did Dr. Google. I'm like, Google, because I didn't know where else to find this information. It wasn't readily available for me, and I didn't really even know where to go and look for it. Thank goodness I was looking at it a few weeks before her surgery, and I ended up getting her medical marijuana card, and I got the caregiver card so that I could go to the dispensaries and get her what she needed. I didn't know what I was doing, had no idea, literally. And so I take her home. She came to, her surgery was in San Francisco, and I took her home with me to Santa Cruz, where she spent 6 weeks with me. But the very first thing I did, we walk her down and put her in the car, and I took the lidocaine patches off of her back, and I replaced them with a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD THC. I got her home, and we started playing with the different tinctures that I had. And it was pretty phenomenal that within about 3 days, my mom, who was living at a chronic, 10 plus on the pain scale, dropped down to about a 6 for the first time in a very long time. A couple days later, she was down to about a 3. And by the end of the first week, she had no pain. And she's been on a lot of medication. She's 1 week, about 2 weeks post-surgery now, with a lot of inflammation in her body. So I was super impressed. About 3 weeks later, and again, mind you, I know there's some doctors in this room. I didn't know what I was doing. Somehow magically, about 3 weeks later, I start pulling medications off her shelf because her blood pressure comes down, the anxiety that she chronically lived with was kind of evening out. Even her pain medication, her opioids started working a lot better. And I just slowly started, at the end of 6 weeks, my mom we took about 4 or 5 medications off her shelf. And if I would have known what I know now, I wouldn't have done that because I didn't realize that she actually had to taper off of some of these. They're very dangerous drugs. So I'm not recommending this by any means. It's just the way that it happened for us. And then I started going back and I thought, what in the world just happened? Why didn't I know about this 20 years ago? And I was pissed. I was really upset because I feel that my mom probably wouldn't have had to have that surgery, at least not the way that it happened in that way, and wouldn't have had to live with that much pain. And I was angry at the world because I'm like, why isn't anybody telling me this? Why did she have to go through all that before I opened, thank goodness that I had some interest in it. I know there's a lot of people that suffer who don't have an advocate. So.